And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I'm Bill Clutter. I'm a private investigator. Some of you may already know me from my work founding the Illinois Innocence Project 2 decades ago, or my podcast, Murder in Illinois, that was released recently by iHeartRadio. But I'm here to talk to you about a book that I'm releasing called Coal Tar. It's about my investigation of a childhood cancer epidemic more than 30 years ago, but the story has relevance today. And I'm going to briefly read a short excerpt of that book. But before I do, I want to let you know how you can obtain an advance copy before it goes on sale to the general public in July. You can visit my website, www.investigatinginnocence.org, and land on our website, and there'll be instructions on how you can donate, make a tax-deductible donation, help us free the wrongfully convicted. If you allow me, I'll read a short blurb from Scott Turow. I want to thank him for giving me my first endorsement of the book. And it's on the back cover, a classic story with very good guys and very bad guys. A tale of corporate greed, lethal pollution, and sick children, and the heroic people who fought to make things right. A wonderful read. Thanks, Scott. One of the heroic people that Scott Turow mentioned is the trial lawyer who tried the CIPS case, Thomas F. Lonergan Sr. And in this chapter, I tell about returning to Springfield, and it's the morning after the Defender of the Innocent Award at the Illinois Innocence Project. This was an event I attended on Saturday night. This is Sunday morning, and I'm going to read from the book. The next morning, I took in the tranquility of nature in Oak Ridge Cemetery. Among the tombstones, life flourishes. The dogwoods and rosebuds were in full bloom, a colorful contrast to the leafless oak trees, with its buds beginning to emerge, majestically towered over the blooms of the flowering trees below, having matured when Abraham Lincoln was alive. A newly risen sun poked through the canopy of the mighty oaks, vanguards of his tomb, shining its light through the branches that gently swayed with a light breeze. Songbirds filled the air with the melody of their mating calls. After a moment of silence, I got back in my car and headed toward Lake Springfield to pay Tom Lonergan a surprise visit. He was living in the house on the lake where he and Carol raised their 4 children. The last time I saw Tom had been many years ago. When I pulled in the drive, Tom was outside, tending to the garden Carol had planted. Weeds were strangling Carol's flowers, the last living things besides the legacy of their 4 children and grandchildren that kept her memory alive. My visit had put a smile on Tom's face. I offered to take over the task of tugging out the weeds, better suited for someone like me, a younger man at age 59. Tom shuffled over, and we embraced our renewed friendship. As the noon hour approached, Margaret Casey, also widowed, came by to check in on Tom. Her husband, John Casey, Tom's best friend, who was also a lawyer, I knew from the courthouse. As couples, John and Margaret Casey spent many years together socializing with Tom and Carol. That day, Margaret brought Tom a home-cooked meal. She was also helping him edit Tales of Tomas, a novel Tom wrote about an Irish sailor who explored the seas off Nova Scotia well before Christopher Columbus sailed to America. At age 81, Tom's short-term memory was not as clear as it once was, but his memory of the CIPS case more than 2 decades after the trial ended was vivid. It felt like old times being back by his side. Tom had become a father figure to me during the many hours, days, months, and years we spent together working on the CIPS case. While in Springfield, I visited my old friends, Peter Wise, Gordon Gates, and Fred Schlosser. While there, I ran into Donna Hodge, Tom's former secretary. She was now working for Gates, Wise, and Schlosser. I told her about my recent trip to visit with Tom. Did you know he waived his legal fees in the CIPS case? He did? I was dumbfounded. Giving his fee to the families was a selfless, compassionate act. I visited Tom more often that year, and during one of the trips, Margaret shared with me memories of her own father, Ralph Bradley, who founded and served as the first president of the Illinois Farm Union. Raised on a small family farm in Anna, Illinois, in Union County, at the far southern tip of the state, Margaret's father had been a critic of the Republican farm policies of the Eisenhower administration. He believed that benefited large corporate farm operations through a corporate welfare system which threatened to drive small family farms into bankruptcy. Margaret's father would often deliver speeches telling his members, "Ask not what your country can do for farmers. Ask what you can do for your country." At the time he traveled the rural farm towns of Illinois to deliver that speech, Ralph Bradley had no idea on one of his travels to Washington, D.C., he would be introduced to Senator John F. Kennedy, a rising star in the Democratic Party. Ralph Bradley became a key advisor to Kennedy, heading his national campaign, Farmers for Kennedy, in the presidential election of 1960. When Kennedy traveled throughout Illinois campaigning, it was Ralph Bradley who introduced him to farmers, giving that refrain to put aside their own self-interest and sacrifice for the common good of the country. After Bradley delivered that line, the crowd rose to their feet with a thunderous clap of approval. Kennedy's other presidential contenders, former Illinois Governor Adlai Stevenson, who had been the Democratic nominee in the previous 2 presidential elections, and Minnesota Senator Hubert Humphrey, Texas Senator Lyndon Johnson, and Missouri Stu Symington were left in the dust of JFK's momentum that propelled him to the White House. Kennedy walloped them all in the Illinois primary, taking 64.6% of the vote on April 12, 1960. After defeating Vice President Richard Nixon, John Fitzgerald Kennedy borrowed that phrase from Ralph Bradley and substituted the word "you" in place of farmers when he delivered the most famous line ever spoken to an inaugural address to the nation on January 20th, 1961. "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." It was a call to shun the avarice of greed and work collectively together for the common national interest, an idea that has more urgency today as it did then. He has loosed his faithful lightning up his terrible whistle. His truth is marching on. Everybody sing with me. Glory, glory, hallelujah.